Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great presentations, and now members of the association, members of the conference, I don't want you to let them off the hook. You got them up here now to answer the questions. Sir, Colonel Holzbeck.
Gentlemen, this is a question for the whole panel and actually for the floor. This is a question for the whole panel and for the floor. In reviewing the current versions of the final drafts, if you will, of FM 3-0 and 3-07, the full spectrum operations and stability operations manuals, I've had about as hard a time finding a discussion on civil military operations as one would have finding Thomas Jefferson at Baghdad. In other words, there's very little discussion of it. And there are some sources that told me that basically what the Army has decided to do is to discard the term civil military operations. I'd like to ask the panel if they could kind of explain, if that is indeed the case, why that is indeed the case, and see what the reactions are from the floor. Thank you.
I don't think that's the case. I think you still see the term CMO out there. The new JP 357 is being rewritten. It's titled Civil Military Operations. So I don't know that there is any specific agenda within the Army to eliminate terms like civil affairs operations or civil military operations. One of the challenges I see is that many of this emerging stability operations doctrine, and it's not even doctrine yet, really it's just concepts. The people writing those concepts on the Joint Staff, in OSD, and to a much lesser degree in the Army, don't have a civil affairs background. I mean, there's a few civil affairs practitioners in Army stability ops. Colonel Simon Woolsey, I don't know if he's still here, has a couple of civil affairs personnel assigned to his office. But most of the places you go to that have a bumper sticker or a sign outside that says stability operations do not have civil affairs people in those offices. What you have are people who came from an interagency background, someone who came from an academic background, maybe they were in the military before, but they weren't civil affairs, and they're writing these concepts that as they get, spread around DC and around the Pentagon, end up in documents and they get titles put on them, and there's not enough civil affairs kind of aspects applied to that. I think that's one of our challenges. So I was encouraged to hear that within the AGR breakout, I'm an AGR officer, but as USA KPOC and OCAR looks at where they're going to put Army Reserve CA AGR positions, a lot of consideration needs to be put, and where do we put some of these senior civil affairs positions, either in the interagency or in offices that deal with stability operations or the combatant commands that are dealing with stability operations, because unless you have someone there, you're not at the table, you don't have a voice. You may have a voice where you're at, if you're working in a special operations headquarters or something, you have a voice there certainly, but in the stability operations world, if you're not at the table, you don't have a voice. So I think that's one of our challenges.
I believe one of the exceptions to what Norm just described is actually in the Combined Arms Doctrine record at Leavenworth. There is an Army Reserve AGR 05 CA officer who's actually assigned to the 307 effort. So I don't believe that CMO is going away in doctrine, but I will look at that.
Okay, I think, Martin, you had a question, and then we'll go, sir, to you on the front row, and Captain, you third.
My question's for Colonel Cotton. Current policy, doctrine, and procedures for the Joint Operational Planning System places all civilian agencies into what's called Annex Victor, whether they're U.S. government, whether they're UN, and so on, implying that they're part of the commander's operational plan. Is it not time to elevate that resource to a friendly force in that chapter, or that paragraph of the operations order, so that you start coordinating across these agencies? it seems like a policy fix that needs to be done pretty quickly.
I think there are a couple issues that relate to that. One is we, combatant command, when we're writing our plans and we write the annex, Victor, and for those not familiar with that term, that's the interagency annex, we often write in there the task that we are giving to the interagency, which, you know, is laughable because the combatant commander cannot direct the interagency to do anything. And then, as I covered earlier, because of the President's National Security President's Directive 44 that says the State Department is the lead, arguably we should be in a much more collaborative environment with SCRS in writing our plan, the Annex Victor of the plan, and the Annex G of the plan. I think it really calls for a more collaborative framework for how we work. The challenge with that is the guidance from OSD is that you only can coordinate with the interagency under certain conditions and with certain authorities. So it makes it very difficult if you're a CA planner at a CA command or at a combatant command and you're trying to write the Annex G. You're not really allowed to pick up the phone and call the State Department or call a country team and begin coordinating and collaborating on what your Annex G should be. Many of us have done that. I've done that, not knowing that I was violating policy, and I probably would have done it anyway, but you know, it makes it kind of hard for us to work. NSPD 44 states that there must be a general framework developed for coordinating military plans. That I didn't cover it in my briefing. It's called the Interagency Management System. It's been approved by the National Security Council. It is the way we will operate. There is at least one course of, I know out there, not GIFCOM, but the Joint University down there, Joint Staff College at Norfolk is running a course teaching practitioners in stability operations about the interagency management system. I would highly encourage CA officers that work at the strategic level, certainly if you work at a CA command, if you're a planner there, to look into that course and go to it, because you need to understand how we're going to operate in the future in a post-conflict environment. It will be part of a civil-military team, but the State Department is the focal point, and you're going to see these team concepts that they've developed kind of out there, and we're going to have to work with them and work as a team effort. So,
Thank you.
Colonel DePaul. I'm Colonel DePaul, life member of the Civil Affairs Association. Currently I teach at the University of Maryland, University College, and one of my courses, I really have emphasized General Petraeus's counterinsurgency field manual. And for us, this seems to me a very important manual, not just because it's General Petraeus, now commander in Iraq, but because it mentions civil affairs many times. In fact, on page 272, it has a detailed chart of civil affairs in use. And so my question really is, a marvelous, informative panel, and this isn't by way of criticism, but I just wondered why you haven't even mentioned, haven't brought to our attention in the way that General Hashem mentioned 2 books that should be on our reading table, why you haven't mentioned this Petraeus coin manual, especially since it's been published. It's an unusual manual. It's been published by University of Chicago, and you can read it far better than and have more interest and more readability, if I can use that word, than the 41-10. So, gentlemen, thank you.
I would just add that I wholeheartedly agree with the good colonel. General Petraeus happened to be a close friend and classmate of mine, and he was